So, welcome. This is episode number 14. Wow. Of If It Be Your Will podcasts. Again, this follows my blog, which is If It Be Your Will. And you'll find most of these tracks on it, and you'll find the podcast on there as well. Today, super pleasure. I'm welcoming Max Bergé of Castle Frank, from Toronto, a Canadian. I'll say a local because we talk to a lot of international artists here too on the podcast. But thanks for joining me today, Max.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, super stoked to be here.
Right on, right on. So we're just going to have a conversation, Max, about you and your music, because I really love it. And there's one song I cannot get out of my head for the life of me, and I've probably played it a million times, for the kids. Just kids. Just kids. God, I love that song.
Nice, man. Thank you. That
It's unbelievable. Tell me about that song, because it's just consumed me over the last few days, and I just want to know about it. Tell me about it. Where'd you write it? What's it about? Any little hints or details or tips and tricks that you could tell us about that song, please?
Yeah. That's the oldest song from the record, actually. It was written like well pre-pandemic, I think like 2017, 18. It's it's kind of about like my Tinder days and just, online swiping and kind of the fun that you can have through that, but how, I don't know, in the end you realize you feel a little disconnected and empty,
Yeah. I get that. I get that feeling across quite a few of your songs. Is that a correct statement to say that theme of disconnect comes out quite a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how, in general, I relate to a lot of our modern conditions. Like, I don't feel like I really, fit into the mold of what's expected so much.
Right. And have you felt that from a very young age? As you were growing up, you felt that as well?
No, not really. Like, well, yeah, a little bit, but I'd say it's changed, especially in the last, the last 10 years that I've been in Toronto, that, yeah, there's just aspects of like being social and especially online that I don't, it's just not comfortable for me.
Mm.
And yeah, that song, it was written throughout a lot of, ups and downs in my life, and but it's a fun one in retrospect. Like when I look back on it, it's funny because it was written such a long time ago now. It seems almost like a different person from who I am now.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I read that you started recording in the back of a music store, or am I getting that right? Where you had
it's funny that you're saying this song, because those vocals specifically were recorded in the basement of the guitar shop that I used to work at. Right. And that's when I first was in the city, and that shop, I was living there at the time also, because I was just trying to save up for First and Last, and we recorded the vocals in the basement there. A lot of it was produced, that song specifically, in the basement of that shop. Yeah.
Right. And the equipment you used too, you had a Moog, and then you had a Tempest Drum Machine. Like, tell me a little bit about your writing process with that equipment in mind, because I think that equipment gives that analog feel, which really pairs so beautifully, I find, with your, not only your lyrics, but your vocals as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process, of how it would go about, how those songs would start to come out of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that one specifically, at the time, yeah, exactly. We were using these hardware pieces. I find there's like a tactile experience you get with different pieces of hardware, that it's different from just using a computer, which is primarily how I work now. But back when we were making this record, there's something, I feel like you just create what you want directly.
Right.
And
right.
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you find that there's a difference between when you're doing more of an analog as opposed to when you start to do more of a computer-based recording? Like, can you describe the differences between those two?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel like with the hardware that I use, it's almost like the instruments don't exist and I can just create the sounds that I'm envisioning. And there's kind of like the interface disappears compared to using a mouse.
Right. Right. And what was your beginnings in music? Like, when did you first start to realize that music had to be something that was going to be in your life, and that's the path that you kind of wanted to go down? When did you start to realize those things in your younger years?
This has truly been all I've ever wanted to pursue my entire life. It's directed the last decade plus. Like ever since I was a little kid, this was the only thing I wanted to do. And that's why like after high school and everything, I just decided to move out here and give it absolutely all I have, because there's never been a backup plan or anything else. It's only been this.
Right. Awesome. Well, you're doing it, man. You're doing it. And what, like, where did you start to find that sound that you've come to now? I know you have a new record coming out, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the singles that you've put out has a very distinctive sound. I mean, very indie poppy, but has this mellowy kind of, like, feels like you're kind of floating a lot of the time. How did you find your sound? How did you find, like, this is what I'm going to do Castle Frank, and will be the sound that I want to go after? How did you get to that?
Oh, I appreciate that. Because honestly, so much time and effort has gone into that. I've scrapped endless amounts of material in the process of kind of creating this cohesive aesthetic for the project. Production is really important to me. It's almost the kind of final frontier of creativity. I feel like a lot of, I don't know, emotions and songs have already been written and conveyed, and like timbre is one of the final things that we can push and experiment with. Yeah, so I feel like I try to make all my music reflect what the lyric is saying as in immediate a way as possible. So a lot of the songs, they are kind of like steeped in this kind of, I don't know, haziness. And I feel like the production reflects that.
Yeah. Do you have collaborators that have helped you carve this sound out?
Totally. And I have two guys in particular that I bounce my ideas off and made the record with. One is Nixon Boyd and Matt Letterman. Shout out to both those guys. They made the record with me. Yeah, they've been really helpful just through this entire process.
And do they play on the record as well, or are they just behind the soundboard?
A bit, yeah. Nixon, especially, him and I work on a lot of the lyrics together. We will like take trips together and just completely focus on the core song and not think of any production or anything else, and make sure that is as emotive as possible. And then, yeah, Matt's more behind the boards sort of guy, and he has a vast collection of gear, and yeah, his ear is amazing, and he mixed the whole record. So I feel like he's yeah, definitely a part of the crew that's irreplaceable.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That's cool how that comes together. If I feed off of a little bit of what you said, you guys kind of isolate to focus in on a track or a song, or what's that process like? Where do you have to go, and how does that take shape, the isolating and focusing in? Like, what would be an example of that?
Yeah, about half the record actually was, and like this isn't so much focusing on production or, general aesthetic. It's like completely honing in on the lyric and what the song is about. And we took like 4 or 5 days and we got out of the city and we just, half the record we wrote in those 5 days. And it was like strictly just talking and like figuring out what I wanted to say and then expressing that in as simple a way as possible. And even the last song you were talking about for Jamie, that was done in the last afternoon before we left. It was just a very quick, like, it's very immediate. I feel like a lot of the lyrics on this record, they do have an immediacy and they stand on their own. And I feel like it's because so many of them were written before thinking about any of the production aesthetics. It was making sure the song could stand on its own.
And do you bring in a series of chords to start and then you wrap the lyrics around them, or do you write the lyrics out and then try to figure out a structure musically for it?
Both ways. It's different each time. Sometimes it will just be a lyric without any music attached to it, and then other times I'll make a whole progression, and then the lyric will kind of find itself through singing over that.
Nice. And what were your first instruments that you learned how to play?
Guitar, way back in the day.
High school times?
Yeah, in pre-high school. A lot of like coffee shop open mic days.
Fun.
That was like back, I don't know, 12, 14 years old, that sort of thing.
Wow. You would get up on stage with your guitar and sing songs that you wrote in those early teen years.
Yeah, songs that I would not want anyone to hear now. But yes.
Right. Times have changed.
Yes. And my cool approach has changed.
Right.
Yeah, no. I actually, go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was just saying I don't, as far as instruments that I play, I feel like it's mainly all based through the workstations that I use on the computer now. Like I don't even really play guitar anymore. It's all just vocals and production work through like drum machines and things like that.
Right. Is the nucleus always of the instrumentation always guitar? Like, is that the go-to, or would you play it out on a keys, or like where would you get the actual notes from that you
right now
incorporate?
Yeah, currently like not guitar at all. Like I feel like that doesn't inspire me very much. Most of the time I'll just get a chord arrangement going, like in the program I use Ableton, which is a workstation, and then I'll just write a chord progression and I'll do that all on piano. And then once I have something that feels just that it's conveying the emotion I want it to, then I'll start creating a sound based off that progression. And then I'll throw a soft synth in there and start, experimenting with what notes I'm taking out and everything like that. Cool.
That's really wicked. Tell me about a Castle Frank show. Like, what do you hope to achieve at a show? Or let me rephrase. What's a show that you've done that captured Castle Frank exactly the way you wanted it? Or has that not happened yet?
That has not happened yet, because my first show that I'm headlining is happening this month. And before that, this is going to be my 5th show. And before that, it's all been opening slots. So I wouldn't say I've ever like had the, cross the finish line with my vision for it. But now I have the opportunity to do that. So it's a lot more than I thought it would be, but it's exciting at the same time.
For sure. What's that first headline show? What do you hope to convey through it? What do you hope that people coming to listen to it will leave feeling?
I just want the songs to be represented as clearly as possible. So much work has gone into telling a story over this album, and I want that to come across in the live show. And it's only good. This is the first time I'm ever playing with just me on stage either. So there's additional thought going into just how it's presented and the lighting going into that and things along those lines.
How do you do a show alone? What's your setup for that?
I have it's pretty minimal. It's an interface that I run 6 stereo outputs of all my backing tracks. So then at least the sound guy has some control over what he's mixing. And then I run MIDI directly to that Moog synth. So we're getting the live synth over top of the backing tracks and my vocals. And then I manipulate it all as it goes.
Nice. Well, is that complicated to do? Like, is that like your brain must be all over the place, remembering the lyrics, remembering when to start this part, when I have to actually play something live? Like, that sounds daunting.
The next 2 weeks feel a little daunting, but it feels exciting at the same time. I feel like I got to surrender to the spirit when I'm up there, you know?
Right on. That's great. That's cool. So tell me about the new record, In Your Blood. Right? That's the title of the album?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the tracks on there.
Right. Coming out June 23rd.
Day of the show.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So you've only ever released singles before this record, right? This is your first record that you're putting out?
Yeah, for sure. First record, first headline show. It all feels very, I'm just trying to keep my cool.
So how are you dealing with it all? How do you deal with all this newness that's coming down the road for you?
I'm trying to enjoy it and not feel overwhelmed, because it I don't know. Like I said before, I've put so much into this over the last how many years, and it's all kind of bubbling up to this moment in time. So I'm just really taking it day by day, just focusing on, rehearsals and making sure all the technical side is ready.
Right on. And if I were to ask you, give me a thesis statement about this record. What can people look for if you were to describe this record in 1 or 2 sentences? What's coming out on June 23rd?
I mean, the 9 tracks, they reflect the title track, which is called In Your Blood. And that's just about how, certain people, places, experiences, they can leave a mark on you, that you don't really have a choice if you carry it with you or you let it go. So I feel like, it's about just how experiences. I'm trying to think of that in 1 sentence. Yes, it's about how certain people, they can have an impact on you that you carry for the rest of your life. And all these different songs are about a lot of different people and their effect on me over, these years.
Great. How long has this record been in the making for, Max?
Since 2016.
Wow.
Yeah,
this has been an epic journey, man. Epic journey. Well, I'm super pleased that it's getting out into people's ears, because I mean, the tracks I've listened to, I mean, like I said, they just, I don't want to say haunt, but are omnipresent. I downloaded all of your singles and I put them in a little album and I just play it over and over. My kids come to me like, Dad, aren't you listening to that quite a bit? And I'm like, yeah. And then I like, don't you like it? And they're like, yeah, it sounds really cool. I'm like, well, there you go. That's why I'm listening to it. So it's really fun to kind of get ready to talk to you and kind of get into your mind a little bit, which is really cool.
Awesome. Thank you. What do you connect with about it?
I just find that it is so open, and the vastness in it, I find that most people will find an entry point. And either they'll relate to some of the lyrics, or they'll just relate to the chord structure, like the majors and the minors and the interplay, and like it sounds familiar, but it's not familiar. Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know, it connects. Like it just, I don't want to say the simplicity, because I know there's so much behind it, but I think what you were able to do is create this simplicity for people to gain access to it, where it's across genres, people will find entry into this record or this tracks I've heard.
Awesome. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it was the goal was a pop record, so like simplicity was that was a target. So it's awesome that you said that.
Yeah, well, and I think your hooks too, like your phrasings, and how the songs will change slightly from chorus to verse, the repetition type verses that you have. That, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just super happy that I was able to find this record and find you and have you come join me here. So Max, let's we'll kind of bring things in here, because I don't want to hold you up too long. I'm sure that you have things and practice and this and that to do, but what I know your record's coming out, shows coming out. Give us some other things, like what's going on down the road for you. What should people be aware of, and what are you super excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. The next 2 weeks, like you said, are just all about the show, depending on when this airs. For any listeners, it's going to be June 23rd at the Monarch Tavern in Toronto. Album's coming out that same day. And other than that, I'm already at work on the second one. I'm just really focusing in on finding just a sound palette that doesn't repeat myself. Second one's in the works, and I'm also producing for another artist for the first time. That feels really good. That's a whole different experience, and it feels very freeing. And it's nice to have myself not in the picture and just kind of contributing to someone else's work.
That's wicked. That's very seeing it in two different ways, right? Like I mean, your work can be so personal, because you've just been consumed by it. Kind of having someone bring their consuming songs to you must be kind of liberating in the same time for that artist and for you as well. It's just kind of
absolutely, yeah. And I feel it's I just get into a flow state when I'm working on that stuff, and I just focus on elevating the ideas they're bringing to me as much as possible.
Right. Is it a indie pop kind of record that you're working on as on the production side?
Yeah, it's a little more singer-songwriter, minimal based, like acoustic guitar, vocals, and a lot of like interesting sounds and drum machine stuff and beeps and bloops and all that.
Right on. Well, I wish you a ton of success with this new album and your show. And I hope you come to Montreal and play one time, and I will come to your show and enjoy it. But thanks so much for just kind of coming on here and, laying your heart out, speaking the truth, and sharing some excitement that's coming down. I mean, you've got a great summer ahead of you, which is really cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, good luck with everything.
We don't that we don't need this, we don't need this at all. Yeah, we know